Good morning, everybody. So Miko was generous enough to have me here to talk about kind of the approach and the impact that Hustle has had on a number of campaigns and advocacy groups, probably most notably the Bernie campaign. The more I kind of reflected on it, the more I realized that kind of the approach of Hustle is kind of the culmination of my work thus far doing political work. So I thought I'd start with my story, and like any good story, I wanted to start at the beginning with this slightly embarrassing photo of running for office in high school before the advent of digital cameras. The only point here is that my passion has always been at the intersection of activism and technology, and I was very fortunate to graduate school, to finish up school, just as the Obama campaign was picking up. And I joined the new media team and I fell in love. I built some tools, I administered others, but what I focused on was empowering people, empowering leaders on the ground to do better work. And I knew that I wanted to be a digital organizer. After the Obama campaign, I became a digital organizer for a lot of local and state races, other types of advocacy groups and nonprofits. And what I learned was that the Obama campaign was sort of an anomaly for me. Email was king, and my success was measured on really two axes. How big did I grow the list, and how much money did I raise off of it? My day was spent A/B testing subject lines, putting large unwieldy call-out graphics into the middle of emails, and I remember this one moment I had where, I ran this very successful campaign petition. We got a lot of emails. We called them emails. We didn't call them people or names or signatures. We called them emails. And in the aftermath of measuring the success and what impact that would have on my fundraising, I forgot the small detail of delivering the petition signatures. And I soon sort of realized that my work and a lot of work of digital organizers was really kind of like a new version of direct mail. About this time, I had kind of an important conversation with who would become my co-founder. His name is Roddy, and he had been a software engineer at Facebook for 7 years. And he was kind of lamenting, strangely, the same thing. Here he was working at the world's largest social network. It's about connecting people. And yet, when it came to organizations that did meaningful things, when it came to activism and causes and changing minds and hearts, Facebook looked a whole lot more like this. You have pages, you have administrators, and you blast out an identical message to everybody and hope they share that cat meme. This kind of set off a period of introspection for the two of us, of really trying to answer the question, looking historically and modern, what makes organizations strong and enduring and successful? And we kind of came to three conclusions. The first is that they measure success on the development of leaders. And this sounds like, of course, you develop leaders, but really, it's one thing to develop leaders, it's another thing to measure your success by it. And you are what you measure. Marshall Gans defines organizing as the identification, recruitment, and development of leadership. And it really sunk home, after talking to a lot of people, and then I read this quote in a phenomenal organizing book. It's about religious group organizing, The Purpose-Driven Church by Rick Warren. He writes, you measure a church's strength not by its seating capacity, but by its sending capacity. So that's number one. Number two, you build a structure that's both unified and localized, meaning you have a common mission, but you have a lot of different places where you're doing it and allowing local, priorities to surface and leadership to flourish. So Martin Luther King is, in public speeches, lauded as kind of this leadership figure, but really he was the head of the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, a network of churches. The NRA is a network of gun clubs. The Sierra Club is a network of local activists and hikers. Basically, every organization that's been enduring and powerful has had this property of kind of a federated structure. The third thing is the development of authentic relationships that transcend just the issue. A phrase I heard on the Obama campaign a lot is come for the cause, stay for the people. And unlike a lot of these races that I worked on subsequently, I'm still in touch with the Obama campaign, people I work with, volunteers, staff, I love them and will continue to. So this was what I wanted to build with Hustle, and this sort of became the DNA of what we built. What we decided to do is we built it using text messaging because that's how people talk to each other. We focus on one-on-one relationships, that's all we do, because that gives people who are coming into an organization anew a chance to actually express themselves in a way that's safe, unlike groups and blasts where you don't respond at all and no relationship is built. We allow local groups to exist so that they can send their own messages, but it's under the aegis of kind of a national organization. And most importantly, rather than just kind of having somebody random at the headquarters blast out a message, we empower organizers and volunteers to have their own set of contacts that they message. So what's interesting has happened is they're entrusted with a couple hundred relationships. They are allowed to kind of be drawn into leadership, being entrusted and trained to be the messenger and the person called to move people up the ladder of engagement for these folks. So that's Hustle. Interesting story. Started, with a few organizations forward every time they're in the audience. I think things really took off when we started working with the Bernie campaign. An organizer named Zach on the ground there was our first, the first person. We gave him this app to use. He's using the personal touch. He doubles and triples his numbers. He asks other people on the ground who he's working with, hey, you should use this app. And they say, no, they're inundated with all these other apps. They don't understand this is going to be successful. So he says, can I impersonate you? And they say, yeah, all right, fine. And their numbers double too because he's talking to them personally. And then afterwards, to get adoption, he says, oh, by the way, I've had these real conversations with these people. They think they know you. You need to read these so they have context. And by the way, they all think that your favorite musician is Bruce Springsteen. Eventually, Zach, it spreads to the early primary states. It starts to kind of become this useful tool. He lands in Oklahoma. And, it's this slide. Oklahoma is not exactly known as a bastion of progressivism. But what turned out to be really interesting is once he gave the personal touch and reached out to these people who had never been reached out to about a progressive cause, all of a sudden they raise their hand and they show up. There are these volunteer training meetings, not Bernie rallies, but training meetings. 400 in Oklahoma City, 300 in Tulsa. They just show up in droves. They wound up contacting every person on their target list in 3 weeks, developing the leadership structure that was necessary to do that, and they won. A lot of things happened between then and now, but to this point, 3 million conversations have been started using this tool, 12 million messages have been sent, and most importantly, the thing I'm most proud of is that 4,000 organizers, volunteers, all volunteers, some staff, mostly volunteers, have been empowered to message people on behalf of the campaign. They've become leaders, and they will continue this work in a way that they wouldn't have otherwise. And that these are real conversations between people. A lot of email lists are 3 million, but having conversations with 3 million people like this is something that I'm very uniquely proud of. So in short, I think technology is going towards, building robots that act and talk a lot like people. I'm betting on people. That's what I think the future of organizing is. That's what I think the future of activism is. I think that's what the future of politics are. And if you are an organization that also believes that, or a technology company that also believes that, I'd love to talk. Come find me at the end of this conference, or better yet, shoot me a text. Thank you.